Hello, my friends, and welcome to What Was That About? I'm Dr. Tony Soldano, lead pastor here at All People's Church in Brampton, Ontario, Canada. And part two of our very sensitive subject here on human trafficking. Once again, Pastor Alicia Booth is with us. Thank you for being here, Pastor Alicia.
Thank you for having me.
Wow, our time just flew by.
Completely flew by.
And so we needed to do a part two because this is not only, is it important, obviously, that we bring awareness, but there's just so much to unpack and talk about. And so in the last program, we talked about your background and your experience and how, God has just made you whole and delivered you and healed you. And so we thank God for the power of God, not only to rescue, but to restore. And so we always want to give hope to people that may be caught up in this. But I want to dive, first of all, welcome back.
Thank you.
And we love having you here. You have such great insight and doing great work with the region and the police. And I think we mentioned that you were a social worker in part one. And so we want to talk about human trafficking. And we unpacked a little bit about how this isn't just about, how Hollywood, producers show what this is about. That this is everyday people taking advantage sometimes of everyday people, right? And how people get lured in. And you actually left off the program by saying, be careful how much information you give to people that are quote unquote you've just met or you're at, parties and various things. But, there are code words. There's a code in this world. There's language that maybe parents need to watch out for, because in the last program you said, some of these cam girls are doing videos upstairs while you're cooking pasta downstairs. What are some of the things? What are some of the signs, whether it's code words, whether it's behavior? What should parents be looking for as far as, behavior within their children?
So one of the things that, there's a few things that parents need to be mindful of. But one of the things to be mindful of is language. So what are some of the words, the slang that you hear your son or daughter using? And I would even encourage parents, I encourage you, please do not be afraid to ask. I know oftentimes when I've spoken to parents, they are constantly listening and they're storing information about what they hear their son or daughter say, but they're not always asking. And so part of combating this, especially in your own home, you are on the front lines. You are the first ones to be able to reach out to your children. And so ask about the terminology. Ask. If you hear something that's unfamiliar, ask what it means. If you're hearing it repeatedly or in certain spaces in the house, ask what that means. Other things that they should be looking out for are physical indicators. So things like, is hair being done? Are nails being done? Is there a young lady that's taken up more of an interest with makeup? Notwithstanding, those tend to be regular teenage things. But if it's going towards the extreme, a little too provocative in terms of clothing, or even leaving with changes of clothes. And so they're leaving the house one way and coming back slightly different than the way that they left. Pay attention to those particular things. Things like jewelry, devices, I mentioned in the first program, things that maybe their allowance or their part-time job doesn't seem like it would be able to afford. Secondary cell phones or tablets or things like that, because oftentimes traffickers will want a separate way to be able to communicate with you, ways that can be undetected. Do not be afraid to see what is in your child's phone. There are apps sometimes and apps with secret back doors and things like that to be able to have communication with other people that you don't know about. Other things that would be more concerning if you see them are things that we would call control bruising. So control bruising would be where if someone is physically handling the individual or the youth, and so things like bruises around the neck, or bruises that would appear like fingerprints or thumbprints even on the arms or even around the ankles, somewhere that you wouldn't even think to look. But if someone is being physically dragged, and I know that seems dramatic, but these are the things that happen, there may be bruising around the ankles or even around the calf area where someone's being pulled. And so These are some of the physical indicators to be aware of. When we talk about like mental, emotional indicators, being more withdrawn from family, not wanting to necessarily be a part of family events, sometimes it's because on the other side, they are being groomed and lured into what's considered family there. So with the trafficker or the pimp, right, trying to bring them in to a family environment. And so, they're then learning to withdraw from their own family of origin. So being able to pay attention to some of those things, being fearful even for another person's safety in the home. So if you have a son or daughter who all of a sudden is now more heightened in their awareness, or even like borderline acting like they're paranoid about, say, a younger sibling or something, it could be that there's a threat that's been made toward that family member. And so they become more vigilant and more anxious about that person.
Wow.
So there are several, I'm just scratching the surface, but there are several indicators.
So in the last program, we talked about, the psychology of luring people in, right? Particularly young ladies, and how these pimps are preying on these young ladies. What are they looking for? What are the soft spots? What are the soft targets within these young ladies that these pimps are looking for? What are they targeting?
One of the number one things is a lack of a father figure. One of the number one things. And so whether, this is a young person that has grown up in a single parent home where only mom was there, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are more vulnerable, because they may have a really strong father figure that's in their life that maybe not necessarily be in the home. But again, this is where they ask questions and try to find out information. Youth that maybe are dabbling in drugs a little bit. So if it's, smoking marijuana or drinking, they'll pay attention to who's the one drinking at a party, who's the one that's smoking the weed at a party or smoking the bong or even vaping. Because if you've now opened yourself up, even though you're trying a little bit with your friends, it means you're potentially able to open yourself up to other things. So they may offer other drugs, other things like that. Addictions hugely goes hand in hand with trafficking. It's actually one of the top 3 things that service providers are seeing in our region when people are trying to exit trafficking and exit the life. One of the main areas where they're looking for support is around mental health and addictions, because oftentimes they were lured in with drugs. Drugs has sustained them, has numbed them during whatever is happening to them. So these are some of the things that, traffickers will do to lure people in. And then obviously, again, the gifts. Sometimes even for young men, it's the clothes, it's the shoes that they couldn't afford on their own, but they'll get them from somebody else. And so there are a number of things that they do to lure young people in.
Would you say there's a connection either to poverty or to ethnicity of any kind? Like, are these people particularly being targeted and victimized?
Statistics have shown that families that have come from a socioeconomic background that maybe is struggling a little bit more have had higher levels of involvement. Definitely children and youth that are involved in the child welfare system tend to have higher involvement, because traffickers will target things like foster homes or group homes, right? Where youth are feeling vulnerable, feeling isolated, feeling, rejected by family. And so again, you play up on that emotional part of them. So those become areas. Racialized communities. So when we're talking about, like, even in Peel, Black South Asian families, but part of that too is the catchment of our region and who we see predominantly here. And so even from a geographic place, a demographic place, that makes sense, because it's the majority of our population that we see in the region of Peel. But those are some of the factors that we've seen in research as well.
Now you made a comment, I believe it was off the air, where we talked, is the comment sister wives? Is that the comment you made? And then earlier in the program here, you talked about this sense of belonging. So it's not only that they're luring you into this, but they're giving you this false sense of family, this false sense of you belong to something. As twisted as that is, can you talk a little bit about that? Because even as twisted as it is, there is something within the human heart that wants to belong, that wants to be a part of this, and somehow they're giving this counterfeit to these individuals and luring them in by that. Can you just elaborate?
Yeah. So oftentimes, some of the terms, and again, when we talk about terminology, terms change so rapidly. So like I said to you during the break, some of the terms I learned last year might even be irrelevant now because it's constantly changing. And traffickers aren't stupid. They pay attention to what people are learning so that they can pivot and change and shift so that they're less detected. But when we talk about like luring and this idea of family, terms like referring to your pimp as daddy is something that sometimes I've heard before, or even the girls that are under the control of a trafficker will refer to each other as wives or sister wives. Like again, familial terms that are used, but it's playing up, like you said, on this idea of giving the youth or the young lady what they always wanted. And so if you come from a family or family environment that seems more fractured, they want to play up into that and they will offer you what they think it is that you want. And so actually, even watching a documentary, one of our local news medias here did a documentary a few years back, and they interviewed a trafficker, one of the most notorious ones in the GTA. And during that interview, he said something that every time I hear it and I think about it, it just gives chills down my spine. He said, all I have to do is sell them a dream. He said, all I got to do is sell them a dream. Sell them the white picket fence, the marriage, the kids, the good income, the beautiful house. He said, sell them a dream. And if you give them what they're dreaming for, they'll give you anything else in return.
Wow.
And so it really plays up on what is it that, this young person is wanting and desiring. And then that's what they look to exploit. Wow. And so there's a warning in this, even for families, for parents, to say, what are you doing to, almost keep your homes in order, to foster positive relationships in your family and that connectedness? Because when there is that void, that's what traffickers will often look to exploit.
So, Pastor, we know this within faith circles, and we teach roles, father, mother. You talked about the lack of a strong, positive father figure, and you're bringing this knowledge in from a secular standpoint. These are the things that we see. Is it shocking to you then that we have these movements that are trying to destroy gender, trying to remove names like father, mother, when we're saying, hey, this is what people are utilizing. These are the soft spots and the weaknesses. And then you have this other group that completely wants to wipe out, gender definition. They want to wipe out roles, and particularly what the Bible describes as normal, positive, functioning roles. Yeah. Does that number one, does that disturb you? Does that surprise you that we're almost playing right into their hands?
It doesn't surprise me. It does disturb me because when you think about what you're hearing from people who've gone through these experiences and how when they reflect and realize this is what got me, like this is what drew me, this was the void that was there, when we begin to erase and even play with the definitions of what it means to be a mother and a father, a man and a woman, when we start to play and dabble with that and almost cut and paste it like it's a craft in school, what you're doing is you're further creating this gap. You're further creating this gap, which then leads to confusion. So now, where someone's wanting a mother or a father figure, they're not even sure who to go to for that. And so here you go. You've produced this gap. You've produced this void now that somebody else can come in and say, I'm going to be willing to fill for you.
Wow. So what do you say to the people that just say, hey, listen, this is a profession. People are making money. People are doing it from a volunteer standpoint. It's a lucrative way to make money, and people are not impacted by it. People are not affected. They can get in and out anytime they want. Like you can get a job at Walmart and be hired today and quit in 3 months. Like, what do you say to those people that are negative to what you're saying, that this impacts people?
It absolutely impacts people, 100%. And the person it probably impacts most is that individual making that decision to do this on a voluntary basis. Let me step back for a second and speak to that from the perspective of child welfare and child protection. There is no such thing as a youth 17 years old and under wanting to do this voluntarily. No matter what they say, it is illegal in our nation, it's illegal in the province and in our region for any youth that is 17 and under to say, I am willfully participating in works of sex act for employment. That is a complete lie. It's punishable by law. It's a criminal offense, and there are penalties for that. That actually the Ontario government strengthened in 2021. They actually strengthened the laws around human sex trafficking because of the prevailing problem that it's been. But for the person who is 18 and over that considers themselves an adult and says, I have the freedom to do this, it does impact people. It impacts you, whether or not you realize it, even on a soulish level. You are interacting with multiple partners. There are soul ties that are being developed there. And then it impacts families, because now you have people that maybe are in marital relationships that are sneaking away to do something with you, and it's creating problems within their marriage that potentially can come out and destroy the foundations of the family that have children often associated with that. So there's impacts all around.
So, Pastor Alicia, what would you say to the individual that is creating the demand, to that person that is looking, they're not necessarily a pimp, they're not necessarily the prostitute per se, but they're the one that are creating the demand.
Those are the Johns.
The Johns. Is that still a term?
That is still the term.
It was a term in my day, but what would you say to that person who just says, "Hey, listen, I'm not hurting anybody. I'm paying a fair dollar for what I'm receiving. I'm not making a huge dent. Maybe it's once every 6 months or once a year." What would you say to that John if they're watching? I highly doubt they are, but if they were by chance, what would you say to that person?
You are destroying yourself. You're destroying the person that is being victimized. At the end of the day, you don't realize what distress or duress that person is in if they're coming to work for you. At the end of the day, they are being victimized. And the thing that John needs to know, that ultimately, if this person is being trafficked, that interaction that you exchange with them is rape. At the end of the day, their body becomes the scene of the crime, and you are engaging in rape. You are paying to rape somebody. And so that's important for you to know. Wow. That's a crime. And you need to be aware of the fact that your desire, your need to be able to engage in this is actually a criminal offense, and it's not okay.
Wow. Well, my friends, this is a hot topic. It is destructive. It is anti-humanizing.
Absolutely.
It treats people as objects, particularly young people and young women in particular. And God is against it. God is against it. He's against you that are doing it. But there is hope, and God can rescue you. God can deliver you.
Absolutely.
As you have said, Pastor Alicia, people need to come forward. They need to disclose. There is help. There are resources. Thank God.
Yes.
There are resources in this country, and we are thankful for that. And there is a dream. There is a dream that God wants to give you, not some pimp and some liar or the devil,
right.
but God wants to give you the true dream of your life. And so, you know what? Maybe you need to contact us. If you're in this life and you want to get out. Please contact us. Contact the police. Contact the region. There are people that are here to help you. But thank you for being with us. Thank you for being so open, transparent. Any last comment you want to make?
I would say to anybody and everybody that's watching, similar to what the police said, are you the one? Know that you are the one that is loved. You are fully loved and known by God, and He has purposes and plans for you, like Pastor said. And so wherever you are, whatever it is that you may be dealing with or challenged by or even struggling with, know that there is a community right here at APC that's willing to connect with you and love on you and support you and journey with you.
Well said. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for watching What Was That About? God bless you.